gentlemen, we are back with the third episode or third match of the Kinguin for Charity Tournament. And this match is going to be great. It's going to be RDU versus Gaara. RDU from the newly formed. How do you pronounce that team, Noxious?
Nihilum, I guess. Yeah, that
Yep.
Nihilum, I
Nihil-
guess, depending on how you go for the Latin pronunciation. But yes, that team. Whatever.
Of course, he'll be facing Gaara from Tempo Storm. Now, as I mentioned before the break, these are two players who are looking for redemption. They've both done really well pre-GVG, but post-GVG, they've been kind of struggling a little. They both have very similar accomplishments, both with DreamHack victories, both with very high placings at WCA, and both with quite a few minor tournaments. But right now, Gaara, he hasn't been performing that well, and I know he said to Frodan at on ESL broadcast that he knows he's struggling. He knows he's not performing to par, and he just wants to bring it back. And I think this could be his chance to do so, but it's going to be difficult versus RDU, yet another strong player, yet another player who's just been number one at all times. He was ranked number one in the world for a very long time, but right now he's just down in the dumps.
Yeah, I saw him. I saw his deck list last time. Was it on Hearth Stats? I believe he was playing on that specific tournament with what I thought was the perfect lineup. I don't know how it ended up. I think he got 6-1 or 6-0, whatever. He got a really good score. So he seems to be at least doing well as far as picking decks. Although our Hearth Stats is another tournament. There's many of them, different formats for most of them. That was a Swiss one. And Gaara, the last time I saw him play, I believe he was playing some weird hunter deck with a Metal Tooth Leaper. So that goes quite a while back, but it was an attempt at making something work that I think a lot of people had overlooked. I don't know if he has dropped the idea since, but definitely something he did try.
Yeah, both these players have very different styles. RDU is kind of more of a standard player. He prides himself a lot in his ability to choose decks that are best for the tournament format and best for the metagame. For example, back when bans were first starting to come into the scene, he banned Hunter and he played Handlock. He was one of the first players to do so back when Hunter was pretty much one of the only counters to Handlock, and he won just a few tournaments just by doing that. And in contrast, Gaara, he's more of the he's pretty much the least standard player in all of Hearthstone. He always comes up with his own decks, his own ideas. He doesn't really try to listen to many other people, and he comes up with like just the craziest things ever, like strange Echo of Medivh decks. He comes up with these like Druid decks with double Sunwalkers that he used to win DreamHack. But I guess it's working for him. If he can win tournaments like that, then all the power to him.
Yeah, he's a very he innovates a lot, and like I remember his what was it? He was playing a Shaman deck with. I think there were Earth Elementals and like 2 Spellbreakers to silence Ancient Watchers. He was trying all sorts of goofy stuff. He's just that type of player. He's very innovative. He tries a lot of stuff, whether it's going to work or not, just for the sake of seeing if it'll end up being functional and maybe improve it. If it looks like it has some kind of merit to it, he'll just refine it until it's tournament ready, and then he'll bring that to surprise his opponents. So it wouldn't surprise me if he comes up with something a little bit out of the ordinary here, at least in some partial way.
Now we're starting very soon, but before we do, let's talk about the classes both players are bringing to the tournament. Gaara will be bringing Druid, Hunter, Mage, and of course, Shaman, because Gaara, of course, is the best Shaman. Yeah. Whereas RDU will be bringing Hunter, Mage, Paladin, and Druid. Both players have banned Hunter. Obviously, they saw what happened in the last match, and they didn't want the same thing to happen to them. So it's going to be Gaara with Druid, Mage, Shaman versus RDU, Mage, Paladin, Druid. And the first decks are going to be Gaara will be playing the Shaman, whereas RDU will be playing Paladin.
Yep. Wait, Gaara changed his...
Oh, sorry. Gaara will be picking Druid. He just changed his mind. He's going to be playing Druid against RDU's Paladin.
I was trying to read that. Okay, good. I'm glad you managed to figure out what that meant. So, yes, apparently it'll be Druid against... How do you feel about that matchup, actually?
I feel like it really varies on the type of Paladin and the type of Druid.
Yeah.
I feel like faster Paladins, like with a lot of zombie chows, will be a little bit better against faster Druids because they can control them better. Yeah. Whereas slower Paladins will be better against slower Druids because they can answer the threats a bit more. So it's gonna it's the matchup really depends basically.
Yeah, like fast paladin against slow druid, I feel like slow druid could get a pretty decent amount of wins depending on how many equalities are drawn. So
Wait, it's gonna be druid versus druid?
I'm lost.
Okay, I guess we're gonna go with that.
Yeah, it turns out it's gonna be a druid mirror match. All right, so misinformation was spread, and prepare for the wild growth spam, ladies and gentlemen.
No, this matchup is all about who can draw the first wild growth, and
The first
basically, if one person draws wild growth and the other doesn't, it's almost game over. But fortunately, both players have wild growth in their opening hand, so it's going to be a fairly even game.
So it's gonna be fun, is what we're saying. Because when you're in like Innervate Town and only one guy has a wild growth, it's pretty tough. It's actually nearly unrecoverable for the player who doesn't have it.
Yeah, this is going to be a really fun match because, as we can see from the hands, both players are running. They're running different types of druids. Gaara is running Piloted Shredder, Spectral Knights, and Karen. That probably means he's going to be running more of a faster druid, whereas RDU is running Kel'Thuzad. And wow, he draws a Force of Nature. That's something we really don't see often, running Kel'Thuzad and Force of Nature in the same deck.
Alright, I think I'm either frozen or something happened here.
Okay, I'm still in the game, so I'll just keep continuing. Wow, RDU wrathed his opponent's Piloted Shredder, and his opponent got a Captain's Parrot. Unfortunately, exactly not what he wanted. Probably the worst drop. Pretty much the worst, along with Novice Engineer. Gaara answers back with a Spectral Knight. RDU has some choices now, but we have a possible Druid of the Claw that's weak to Black Knight, or he can Azure Drake. But I feel like he has to go for the risk and possibly get Black Knighted because Azure Drake just trades way too, not very well at all against the Spectral Knight. Noxious, are you back?
Yes, I am, at least vocally. I don't know if my camera's seen. I can't see the game at the moment, so I'm gonna have to rejoin the call again.
All right, sure. RDU, again, has a lot of choices. He could kill off the Spectral Knight, trade it off a 4-2 for a 4-2, and then have the Ancient of Lore to answer the Cairn. And he sets it up so that the Ancient of Lore will be able to trade directly with the Cairn, and the next turn he'll be able to silence it as well. So Cairn basically will not have the Death Rattle next turn if all things go according to plan. Gaara, turn 7, he has a Dr. Boom in hand. What else is he going to play? I think Gaara right now is just considering if he's going to Dr. Boom and then Innervate out a Wrath on the
for the card
Ancient
draw?
of Lore. Yeah, for card draw. Just so the 5/5 won't trade as well against the Cairn.
At this point, has he seen enough stuff to know that he's up against a Tone Druid? Or at least a much more heavy, heavily defensive one. I don't think he's seen enough of that.
I don't think so. He's pretty much only seen Druid of the Claw and Wrath and Ancient of Lore.
That is not nearly enough information.
Oh man. Both players have Black Knight, but I feel like the Black Knight is going to be a lot more valuable for Gaara as the faster Druid. Especially because he has board control now, and he has a Dr. Boom against RDU, who doesn't have a big game hunter.
I mean, a swipe top deck here would be pretty good here for Gaara at this point.
Yeah, unfortunately, no swipe was to be found.
Yeah, and this engine will just fall down to the Black Knight. Do you even bother with that, or do you just sacrifice or attack with the? Okay, yeah, he's going to try to maintain as much initiative as he can by using Black Knight. Just try to press his advantage.
I think that's definitely the correct play. Also because Gaara doesn't know whether his opponent is a Taunt Druid or not. The Senjin is not indicative of anything because a lot of combo Druids also run Senjin. So yeah.
I mean, at this point, no big game hunters in hand, no swipes to reset this board to an acceptable position. How do you go about dealing with this board? Do you have to Force of Nature? What's on the board? You're guaranteed to take 11 damage as retaliation from the Black Knight and other sources. I mean, this is such a terrible turn.
Yeah, RDU, he's playing Druid, so once he gets back on... once he falls behind on board, there's basically very little way to come back. Gaara's really surprised at his opponent's play. He's like, Oh, such a weak turn. Do I just win now?
I think he does actually. If we look at what he's got, what does he got? He's got a total of 15. Yeah, he's got lethal, I think, with Keeper of the Grove. Exact lethal, in fact, unless I'm mistaken, which I probably am. No, actually, I was not mistaken. Yay! All right, so that's
Good
pretty
job.
good value. Yeah, I calculated this super quick, but I do that like 99% of the time it doesn't work. So the 1% of the time it does, it's impressive. To myself, at least. All right, so that'll be game. That's well, the nature of snowballing druids against druids. Sometimes when the board control goes away, there's just no way for you to swing back, and there's no whiplash mechanic really. You know, like
Yeah,
there's no way for just come back.
There's no brawl. There's no equality consecrate.
Mm-hmm.
Druid just plays minions. Hope they trade well, and if they don't, then oh well. Just write that one off and go to the next class.
Yeah, it's kind of the way that it works because, as you said earlier, it's a very honest class in that you know what's coming. At every turn, you have a vague idea of what's going to be falling down next. So there's really there's no surprise there. So they can't ever. Oh, I mean, sometimes they might. Somebody might tech some really fancy, Poison Seed Starfall, but that's so unlikely to help the turns where they need it, which is very much earlier than that. That you're generally not going to get surprised by much of the tech that they'll have.
Yeah. RDU not able to come back from that, so he'll have to go to his next classes, either mage or paladin.
Mage.
You think mage?
Well, it depends. I don't know. He hasn't seen combo.
He hasn't seen combo, but the cards.
I mean, then again, it's so awful.
Yeah, the cards in Gaara's deck. He saw a Spectral Knight. He saw a Pilot Shredder. That definitely indicates, oh, he has combo in his deck.
You can't actually just go mage against druid anyway most of the time because they can just burst your first block out of nowhere if they get a correct draw. And how do you stop once they start? If they ramp, let's say off of Wild Growth, and they manage to put down Yetis and then follow up with 5 drops, 6 drops on curve, you can wipe the board. But all it takes is a Keeper of the Grove, to deny a Doomsayer, and then you'll need a second one to just keep going. So Paladin gives you the ability to equality and wipe the board.